The can rests on the desk. It is cold. A single sealed cylinder of aluminum. Condensation beaded along its side, reflecting the overhead light. It sits there, silent, an object of perfect, engineered uniformity. You reach out, fingertips tracing the sharp edge of the pull tab. The plan is simple, almost scientific in its cold precision. One can, every single day, for 365 days, you are not looking for refreshment. You are looking for the data. You stare at the surface, wondering how the body handles a relentless daily intrusion of high-density syrup. You calculate the duration in your head. A full year. The room is quiet. The only sound is the steady hum of the computer fan. You push the can slightly to the left, aligning it with the edge of your notebook. This is the baseline. This is the start of the record. You have already decided that the outcome is inevitable, yet you feel a detached curiosity about the exact mechanics of the decline. You inhale, watching the light catch the metallic rim. The experiment begins now. The metal tab gives way with a sharp mechanical click. A thin hiss of pressurized gas escapes, followed by the faint, sweet scent of syrup. You lift the can and take the first drink. It is cold, carbonated, and intensely concentrated. As the liquid reaches your stomach, the reaction starts. The sugar molecules break down rapidly, flooding the bloodstream. Your blood glucose levels rise in a steep, vertical line on an invisible chart. The body senses the danger immediately. In the depths of your abdomen, the pancreas registers the sudden, massive surge. It pivots from its resting state to full operation. Cells within it pulse and fire, dumping heavy loads of insulin into the system. This is a frantic chemical scramble to shuttle the excess sugar into your cells before it can damage your vessels. The internal environment is now in a state of high alert chaos. You sit still, feeling nothing but the fading tingle of bubbles on your tongue, while inside, your body works at maximum capacity to correct the sudden forced imbalance. The experiment has moved from theory to immediate biological reality. While your pancreas continues its frantic labor, the caffeine begins its own work. It travels rapidly through your circulatory system, crossing the blood-brain barrier within minutes. The effect is immediate. It binds to adenosine receptors, effectively blocking the chemical signals that tell your brain you are tired. The fog of the afternoon lifts. A sharp, artificial clarity sets in. You feel your focus tighten. The task at hand seems easier, the world clearer, and your movements more precise. It feels harmless, almost beneficial. You mistake this chemically induced agitation for genuine vitality. You tap your fingers against the desk, energized by the sudden, synthetic spike in your heart rate. Your pupils dilate slightly. The discomfort of the initial sugar influx is pushed into the background, drowned out by this new humming intensity. You look at the empty space on the desk where the can sat, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The body is quiet, humming with a borrowed energy that masks the underlying strain. It is a clean, efficient sensation that convinces you the experiment is under control. You lean back, satisfied, unaware that the baseline for your daily functioning is already being fundamentally rewritten. By the 7th day, the experiment shifts from a conscious decision to a biological mandate. You find yourself reaching for the desk at the same hour, your hand moving before your mind has fully formulated the intent. The ritual is now a reflex. As you pull the tab, the sound of the opening can triggers a physiological anticipation. Your brain has mapped the sequence: sound, pressure, sugar, reward. Each sip sends a surge of dopamine through your neural pathways, a fleeting spark of pleasure that reinforces the behavior. This is the feedback loop closing. You are no longer just drinking to hydrate or satisfy a whim. You are feeding a growing requirement. When the clock nears the time for the daily intake, the brain begins to prime itself, signaling a subtle but persistent unease that only the carbonated liquid can soothe. The reward system has been rewired. It now prioritizes the immediate hit over long-term equilibrium. You observe the can with a sense of familiarity that borders on dependency. The pattern is locked. The neural pathways are paved, and the choice to continue is no longer a question of will. It is a programmed response to a system that has learned exactly how to demand its next dose. The pleasure is a phantom. It vanishes long before the liquid is gone, leaving behind a hollow space in your nerves. The surge of energy you enjoyed moments ago begins to retreat with alarming speed. Your blood glucose, once peaked, now hits a steep downward slope. Your cells have already taken in the available sugar, and the insulin your pancreas released is still flooding your system, looking for fuel that is no longer there. The shift is physical. Your eyelids grow heavy, dragging downward with a weight that feels unnatural. The sharp clarity you felt earlier dissolves into a dull, throbbing haze. You try to focus on the screen, but the words blur. Your limbs feel leaden, as if the gravity in the room has doubled. A cold, sudden fatigue settles into your muscles, making even the act of sitting upright a conscious effort. This is the crash. It is not just a lack of energy. It is a profound systemic depletion. Your body demands a recovery that it cannot reach. You are trapped in the wake of the spike, experiencing the first true cost of your daily habit. The world dims, and the only thing left is the singular, gnawing urge to close your eyes and drift into the silence of the midday slump. 30 days have passed. You stand before the mirror, searching for a sign of the change you suspect is coming. You find nothing obvious. The face looking back is the same as it was 4 weeks ago. Your skin shows no damage, and your posture remains unchanged. You interpret this absence of visual evidence as safety. You assume the experiment is benign. But beneath the surface, the internal landscape has begun a silent, radical transformation. Your brain is not wired to register liquid calories as sustenance. It registers the sugar, it registers the reward, but it fails to account for the energy density of the beverage. As a result, your internal caloric intake has surged, yet your satiety signals remain muted. You find yourself feeling hungry just minutes after finishing a meal. You reach for another soda, driven by a phantom lack of fuel. Your body is storing the excess, tucking it away into spaces you cannot see. The weight gain is happening in the shadows, hidden behind a steady reflection. You are eating more, yet feeling less satisfied, setting the stage for a metabolic shift that the mirror is not yet ready to reveal. The damage is not just internal. It is happening right behind your lips. Every time the carbonated liquid washes over your teeth, a subtle chemical reaction begins. Acid pools in the crevices of your molars, lingering long after the last swallow. This is a corrosive bath. Your enamel, the hardest substance in your body, cannot withstand this constant low pH assault. It begins to soften, losing its mineral density day by day. You do not feel the erosion. There is no pain, no warning signal, no sudden ache to alert you that your defenses are failing. You smile at your reflection, seeing only the same teeth you have always had. You are unaware that the protective barrier is being systematically stripped away. The edges of your teeth become thinner, more translucent, and increasingly vulnerable to the next strike. You continue the routine, pouring the acid over the very foundation of your bite. You are dismantling your own smile, one sip at a time, while remaining completely oblivious to the thinning walls of your dental health. The decay is silent, steady, and entirely of your own making, hidden beneath the veneer of daily habit. 3 months have passed. The biological toll has moved deep into your core. Your liver, the primary filter of your system, is now working in a state of constant, desperate overtime. It was designed to process nutrients, but it was never built to handle the relentless, daily flood of refined sugar you have been pouring into your veins. The influx is too much. The liver hits its limit, and the chemistry shifts. Instead of filtering the energy, it begins to force the excess into a new form. It converts the sugar into fat, moving it out of the bloodstream and tucking it deep into the abdominal cavity. This is not the fat you can pinch with your fingers. It is visceral fat, packing itself tightly around your internal organs. It is a slow, silent colonization. Your liver strains under the weight of this conversion, its cells struggling to keep pace with the demand. The organ is becoming a storage depot, burdened by the very substance meant to provide power. You feel nothing, yet the architecture of your internal body is being reorganized. The sugar is no longer just fuel. It is becoming a physical mass, wedged between your organs, altering the way your body sits, breathes, and functions from the inside out. The internal environment is changing. Your cells, once responsive to the signaling of insulin, are beginning to retreat. They are tired of the constant, aggressive spikes that hit your bloodstream day after day. In response to the relentless waves of sugar, your cells start to pull their receptors inward, effectively locking their doors to prevent further intake. This is the onset of resistance. The insulin is still there, surging through your vessels, but it no longer carries the same authority. It knocks. But the cells do not open. The sugar remains trapped in your blood, unable to reach the places where it is needed for energy. This failure creates a feedback loop of exhaustion. You feel it in the mornings, when the simple act of standing up requires a conscious, heavy effort. A deep, persistent sluggishness settles into your muscles, a fatigue that sleep cannot touch. Your metabolic engine is misfiring, running on high-octane fuel that never reaches the cylinders. Every movement feels weighed down, as if the air itself has become thicker. You are operating at a fraction of your previous efficiency, yet you remain unaware that your own biology is actively shutting down to protect itself from the tide you keep pouring in. 6 months in, the invisible has become unmistakable. The internal struggle that began in your organs now forces its way to the surface. You feel the change in the way you move. There is a new resistance in your midsection, a persistent tension that pulls against your skin. It is no longer just a feeling of sluggishness. It is a physical barrier. You catch your reflection in the glass and notice the subtle outward migration of your waistline. It is a slow, steady expansion, a literal enlargement of the space you occupy. You try to bridge the gap between who you were and who you are becoming, but the evidence is staring back from the mirror. It is not just the weight, it is the way your body has reorganized itself to accommodate the excess. You find yourself adjusting, tugging at edges, trying to ignore the reality that your physical form is shifting. Each day is a new increment, a tiny, silent accumulation that has finally breached the threshold of perception. You are forced to confront the consequence of your choices. The evidence is no longer hidden in the blood or tucked away in the liver. It is draped across your frame, a permanent record of the 6 months you have spent building this new, heavier version of yourself. Beyond the outward expansion, a more volatile change is taking root within your veins. Your heart works harder now, pushing against a system that has grown rigid and strained. The blood pressure creeps upward, a silent, relentless climb that you cannot see but begin to feel in the quiet moments of the day. It manifests as a dull, throbbing pulse behind your eyes when you stand too quickly. The walls of your arteries, once supple and resilient, are now under constant, abrasive assault from the high-sugar environment. Your internal equilibrium is fracturing. The body begins to broadcast its distress, though you dismiss the signals as minor inconveniences. There is a newfound tightness in your chest, a subtle constriction that happens whenever you exert yourself. Your warning systems are flaring, casting off alerts that your biology is reaching its breaking point. This is not a sudden collapse, but a gradual, mechanical failure. Every beat of your heart carries the weight of the last 6 months, a rhythmic reminder that the internal landscape is no longer stable. The pressure is mounting, a steady rising tide within your own pulse, preparing the stage for the damage that is about to surface. The clinical hum of the dental office feels sharper than usual. You sit in the chair, the bright overhead light washing out the room as the metal probe scrapes against your back molars. The dentist pauses, the tool hovering in place. A mirror is adjusted. There, hidden in the crevices of your teeth, are 3 small, dark spots. The dentist points them out, the metal tip tapping against the softened enamel. You stare at the screen, watching the magnified reality of your own decay. A cold surge of anxiety hits your chest. A sudden, sharp realization that the internal damage has finally broken the surface. Your heart rate quickens. You look at the dentist, waiting for a diagnosis that links this to your daily routine, but you cut the thought off before it can fully form. You blink, steadying your breathing, and force a thin smile. You tell yourself it is just bad luck, a fluke, a genetic quirk, anything but the truth. You ignore the acid-etched reality in your mouth, burying the connection under a layer of denial. As you stand to leave, you convince yourself that these spots are isolated incidents, separate from the liquid habit that is slowly rewriting your biology, one sip at a time. The walk back to your desk feels like a reset button. You sit down, the lingering sting of the dental probe fading into the background of your mind. Outside, the world moves, but your focus narrows to the single metallic object waiting on your blotter. You know the spots are there. You know the acid is working. Yet, the fear is a distant, muffled sound compared to the immediate, demanding pull of the habit. Your hand reaches out, fingers curling around the cold, slick aluminum. The muscle memory is absolute. You do not even look at the tab as you pop it open. The hiss of gas escaping is the only signal you need. You take the first sip, the rush of sugar hitting your tongue with a familiar, searing intensity. It is a calculated surrender. You are not unaware of the danger. You are simply unable to stop the momentum. The routine has become a structural part of your day, more essential than sleep, more reliable than hunger. You ignore the faint ache in your molars and focus on the cold liquid sliding down your throat. The decision is made. The cycle continues. You are not just drinking. You are feeding the very thing that is dismantling you, one swallow at a time. 9 months of the cycle have passed, and the world has changed, though not in the way you expected. You sit in your kitchen, a crisp red apple in your hand. You take a bite, expecting the familiar burst of natural juice and sweetness. Instead, your tongue registers almost nothing. It is a hollow, waterlogged experience. You chew, waiting for the flavor to emerge, but the fruit tastes like wet cardboard. Frustrated, you reach for the soda can on the counter. The contrast is immediate and violent. The syrup hits your tongue with a sharp, aggressive intensity that makes your mouth water. It is a chemical overload, a concentrated assault of sugar that drowns out everything else. You realize with a start that your taste buds have been recalibrated. The subtle, complex sweetness of the apple is now invisible to your senses, rendered bland by the constant, extreme stimulation of the soda. You look at the half-eaten fruit in your hand and feel a sudden, hollow disconnect. Your own biology has been rewritten to reject the natural, demanding the synthetic. You are no longer tasting food. You are chasing a threshold of intensity that keeps moving further away, leaving you unsatisfied with anything less than the syrup. Your body is no longer a self-regulating vessel. It has become a relentless high-output factory for metabolic syndrome. Deep within, the pancreas works in a state of frantic, constant labor. It pumps out waves of insulin, racing to keep pace with the relentless tide of sugar you introduce every single day. The cells, once receptive, now begin to push back, shielding themselves against the chemical barrage. You feel the consequence of this struggle as a heavy, dragging fatigue that settles into your bones, yet you ignore it, reaching for the next can, as if the routine were a biological necessity. The liver is equally overtaxed, straining under the unceasing influx. It has no choice but to convert the excess glucose into stored fat, tucking it away in layers around your internal organs. This is not just weight gain. It is a fundamental shift in your internal architecture. Every system is now locked in a desperate, losing battle to maintain equilibrium. The machinery is redlining, pressure builds in your veins, and the once harmonious feedback loops of your metabolism are frayed, replaced by a forced, artificial cycle of spikes and crashes. You are the architect of this malfunction, and the internal systems are now running purely on the momentum of your daily calculated input. The warning signs have long since ceased to be subtle. What began as a distant possibility in your health checkups is now a looming, tangible reality. You feel a persistent, dull ache in your limbs, a heavy sensation that no amount of rest can displace. Your blood sugar regulation is no longer a smooth curve. It is a jagged, broken line of erratic spikes and dangerous lows. You try to convince yourself that this is merely a temporary slump, a side effect of a busy week, but the evidence is written into the way your body handles the simplest tasks. Your focus fractures under the weight of the constant systemic collapse. The once flexible mechanisms of your metabolism have stiffened, strained to their breaking point by the daily chemical influx. You look at your hands and notice a faint, persistent tremor that vanishes only when you consume more sugar. A grim feedback loop that confirms your dependency. The risk of diabetes has moved from the pages of a pamphlet into your bloodstream. It is no longer an abstract concern for the future. It is the current state of your existence. Every heartbeat carries the burden of this failure. You are standing on the edge of a precipice, watching your own system struggle to maintain the most basic functions of life. The calendar has finally emptied. The 365th day arrives with a quiet, suffocating finality. You sit at the desk, the room around you still, the air heavy with the weight of the year. Your hand moves toward the last can. There is no triumph in this motion, only the hollow momentum of a habit that has replaced your own will. You pull the tab. The metal gives way with a sharp, mechanical snap that echoes against the walls. You lift the aluminum to your lips and finish the last of the liquid. It tastes the same as the first one did, yet the sensation is entirely different. The sugar hits your tongue, but your body no longer responds with energy. It only accepts the insult. You lower the container. You turn your wrist and release your grip. The empty can hits the desk surface. The sound is metallic, sharp, and final. It rolls once, twice, and settles into silence. The experiment is complete. The ledger of your year is now etched into every tissue and vessel within you. You stare at the empty metal cylinder, listening to the quiet of the room, knowing that the cycle has reached its absolute, irreversible conclusion. You pivot from the desk to the mirror mounted on the wall. The person staring back is a stranger, a distorted version of the one who started this year. You lean in, bracing your weight against the vanity, and force yourself to observe the wreckage. Your waistline has expanded, pushing against the natural lines of your frame. You pull your lip down to reveal the molars. 3 small dark spots mar the surfaces, evidence of the acid that has been working in silence for months. You run your tongue over the teeth, feeling the rough patches where the enamel has been stripped away. You draw in a breath and feel the resistance in your chest, a sign of the visceral fat that has accumulated around your internal organs. Every movement feels sluggish, heavy, and uncoordinated. You try to look away, to hide from the reflection, but the image holds you fast. It is a map of self-inflicted ruin. The frayed regulation of your blood sugar, the scarred tissues, the systemic exhaustion. It is all written on the surface of your skin. You are no longer looking at a reflection. You are looking at the bill for a year of choices. The reality of the transformation is absolute, permanent, and staring directly back at you. You step back from the glass, the image of your own decline still burning in your mind. It was never one moment that broke the foundation. It was never a single day that turned the tide. You pace the room, counting the steps, realizing the math of your own undoing. 365 choices. Each one was small, almost invisible. A simple motion of the hand and a quick swallow. You thought you were just quenching a thirst, but you were building a prison. The regret hits you not as a sudden flash, but as a slow cold settling in your chest. You trace the year backward in your mind, seeing the repetition, the identical ritual performed through every season. You see the pattern now, the way each choice stacked upon the last, silent and relentless. There was no grand explosion, just the quiet addition of one day to the next, until the damage became a mountain you could no longer climb. You reach out, touching the cold surface of the desk where the cans once sat, you understand that the weight you carry now is the sum of those tiny, deliberate acts. You chose the path, one sip at a time, and now you have arrived at the only destination possible. Your body is the ledger. Every choice you made for a year is recorded in the tissue, the blood, and the bone. There are no secrets in this biological math. The sugar that spiked your levels, the insulin that surged to compensate, the fat that settled deep within your frame, it is all accounted for. You look down at your hands, then at the empty surface of your desk. The experiment was not just a drink. It was a year-long construction of a new reality. You feel the slow pulse in your neck, the lingering lethargy that has become your baseline. It is the physical weight of those 365 decisions. You once thought the consequences were distant, a future problem for a later time, but the future has arrived. It is sitting in the chair with you. It is the breath you draw. You reach for the final can, turning it over in your grip, feeling the cold aluminum against your skin. You realize that you cannot undo the past, but you can no longer ignore the debt. The ledger is balanced. The bill has finally come due. You set the can down, the metal striking the wood with a hollow sound, and you wait for the silence to settle in.